Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Is everybody properly caffeinated this morning? No? Okay, you won't need it, I promise. I thought we could have a little fun today and shake it up. And I thought we could go through about 900 PowerPoint slides. Would that work for you guys? No? Oh my gosh, that person has to leave, whoever clapped. I'm so glad to be here. I know that this is quite an event where you are the top performers. You are the successful ones and the ones that really create change. So it's an honor for me to be here today. I was actually here recently. I was at an event here a few months ago and I brought my daughter. And it was great. You know, it was one of those moments. I have a 13-year-old son and I have a 9-year-old daughter. And I'm a big believer in travel because I think if you want to learn something new, you have to see something new. You have to do something new. So I bring my children on trips with me as much as I can. And the gift I actually want to give them is I would love to give them the best stamp passport in the world. I've traveled significantly. I'm sure many of you do too. I've been to, about 50 countries, many of them several times. I've been to 48 states. So if you are from South Dakota or North Dakota, could you see me later? I'd really like to meet you. But I made it a mantra for me to get out and make sure my kids see the world with me. In fact, a few years ago now, I took my son with me to Spain. And this kind of ties into what I'm going to talk about today called Little Bigs. And the reason I took him there is he's a huge soccer fan. He's a big Barca fan. And we were going to be in Madrid and Barcelona. And there was a game and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I realized that my job is to teach people about change, and change in big ways. And what I realized with this experience with taking my kids on trips with me is it's really the little things and sometimes the nudges that get people started with change because we resist it so much. And a lot of it is the view of how we grew up, our view of the world, our view of the way how things have to be. And I was really struck by this when I was with my son, and we had been in Spain for a couple days. And he's pretty shy. He's a shy kid, and really sweet. We were going around and we were seeing a bunch of different cultural experiences and visiting, you know, museums and churches and all these things and eating different foods. And at one point, I was there for a meeting. It was a bunch of doctors, 49 different countries. At one point, on a break, he pointed at something someone was doing, and he pulled me down, and he said, "Mom, that's weird." And I said, "What do you think is weird?" And he said, "Well, that's not how we do it." And I said, you know, I was a little taken aback by this, and I said, "Jack, do you realize that when people see you do things, sometimes they think you're weird?" And he thought about that for a second, and he looked at me and he said, "No," like that, "no." I said, "If you're going to travel with me, you can't think of things as weird, you have to think of them as different." And sure enough, the next time we went on a trip, anything he saw that was out of his wheelhouse, that was not part of what he normally knew, he had a very different feeling. He'd say, "Hey, Mom, that's different." And it seems like such a small little thing, but it's that mindset shift, right, that starts to make you open up to how things have to be. And suddenly he enjoyed things and embraced things more than usual. Now, I'll tell you one more story before we dive in, and I was just reminded of this recently when I saw the cowboy boots here. You don't have to travel far, right? Our country's great. It's huge, it's diverse, it's amazing. And we make it a point to see some of the national parks every year. So you don't have to go abroad, is my point, to see something new and different. And a few years ago, we took our kids, we wanted to go out west and show them the Rockies, et cetera. Because I used to work on, I was in advertising before this. I worked on Marlboro, and I met all the cowboys. It was so great. And we went out west, and we ended up in this terrible little town in Colorado called Vail. Have you guys been there before? All right. So we ended up in Vail, and it was great. It was during the summertime, and we climbed the mountains, and we went zip lining, and we went horseback riding. And on the last night, we went to, they have the free family rodeo that they have in Beaver Creek. And has anyone been here to a rodeo before? I'm sure many people, right? I had never been to a rodeo. I couldn't believe this. So we go to a rodeo, and this is not any rodeo. This is one of those high-end rodeo. It's not Bud Light, it's Veuve Clicquot, and everyone's in the stands enjoying themselves. And there's 300-400 people. And I'm there with my husband and 2 kids, and we sit down and we see, there's, I'm gonna say it incorrectly, bronco busting and all this other stuff, barrel racing. And then we get to that halftime, I call it halftime, when they have all the little kids come out for mutton busting. You know what I'm talking about? So this is all new to me. Like, I didn't think you could do this, right? They're gonna ride these sheep are mean, but they're gonna tame them. And My kids are enthralled, literally. There's like 20 little kids that just parade out, and their parents said it's okay, and they have those, I'm gonna call them hockey helmets, right? They look like little bobbleheads walking out there. And the announcer looks at the crowd, and my kids are just enraptured by this. And they'd never seen a rodeo before. And the announcer gets out there, and of course his name is like Bobby or something. And he has this big voice, and he looks at the crowd, and he says, "I want to introduce you all to the future of America." And everyone just starts clapping like crazy. They're so excited. And he looks at the little kids, because they're nervous, right? They're doing something new, so everyone's nervous when they do something new. And he says to the kids, "How many of you here are from this country, from the United States?" And most of them raised their hand. And then he said, "How many of you here are not from this country?" And 3 of the kids raised their hand. And so Bobby walks over to one of the kids on the end. He starts from one end to the next, and he gets down to the first, was a girl. And he says, "How y'all doing?" She says, "I'm good." He said, "Where are you from?" And she was from Buenos Aires. And he said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming." And everyone claps. And he gets down to the next one. It's a little boy, and says, "How you doing?" And he was shy. He said, "Where are you from?" And he was from Calgary. They know a little bit about rodeos, and everybody clapped. And he gets down to the last kid, and my kids are so excited, right? Because this kid on the end is just like jumping, ready to talk to Bobby, right? He's so excited. And he gets down there, and he looks at this kid, and he says, "How y'all doing?" And the kid says, "Sir, I'm good." And he looks at this kid, and he says, "You're not from this country?" And he says, "No, sir, I'm not." And he said, "Well, where are y'all from?" And he said, "I'm from Texas." Oh my God. Those parents of that kid, that was like the best day of their lives, right? That was the best day of their lives. So anyway, I love that story, because that's one of those, like, you can't make it up when it happens. But if you want to see something new, do something new. And that's what I want to talk about in terms of change, right? Life is very complex right now. We are literally drowning in complexity. And I'm going to start to talk about that a little bit later on. But so how do you start to do change, right? How do you embrace it? And what I want to do is I want to talk to you about change that's happening today that's really interesting, and how change occurs. I want to also talk to you about what holds you back personally, or in a group, or as a leader, from making change happen. And then I want to end on what are some small things that you can do to make change happen, right? If we have so much going on in our lives, how can we actually get the habit started so it will stick not just with you, but with your teams? So I've got 2 goals today, because I don't have a lot of time with you. The first goal is I want you to be inspired. I want you to leave here and say, "Oh my God, that was the best speech I've ever heard. I learned so much. I'm going to go out and create change. I can do it in simple ways. I know I can do it." And the second thing I want to do, which is more important, is I want to make you very uncomfortable. And the reason I want to do that is because change does not happen when we are complacent, when we are settled into our ways, when we have habits. Change happens when we have something called productive agitation. It's not conflict, it's contrast. It's inviting things that question the way you look at the world. So if I ask you something today, or we talk about something and you think, "Oh, that's weird," I am questioning the assumptions you have about the way work or things or life has to be, and that's a good thing. Maybe you don't need to change your assumption, but maybe you do, and the only way that happens is if you feel a little uncomfortable. Are you guys okay if I do that? Okay, so let me start by talking about change. So just by show of hands here, how many people think there will be more change in the next 5 years than there has been in the last 5 years? More change. Okay? How many people think there will be less change in the next 5 years versus the previous 5 years? Maybe 1 or 2 people. Okay. Well, congratulations, you're like everyone else. Everyone thinks there will be more change. I happen to think the same thing. I think that there's a reason why. A lot of that has to do with globalization, technology, a lot of it has to do with data. And usually it's around something called the 3 V's. This will make you sound smart at a cocktail party, excuse me. So it's the velocity of change, the variety of change, and the volume of change. Velocity, variety, and volume. There's so much. How do you keep up? And keeping up with change is hard to do, right? But it's what makes you successful. Keeping your antenna up is the best thing you can do. I always tell people, don't keep reading everything within your industry. Stop it. Start thinking about things and connecting the dots outside your industry, because that's where the big change happens. So I want to see how good you are with change. And we're going to play a little game together. So if you didn't work out this morning, get ready. This is your chance. I'm going to play a game with you called In the News, and this is a futurist game. Now, my background is that I'm a futurist, and that is a real job title and a real degree that you can get. It's a master's in science. What it is, it's the studied look at how change happens. Right, my team, I have 17 people around the world. We're in New York City, and I've got people in Singapore and Buenos Aires and Johannesburg, all over. And our job is to teach people like you how to anticipate and activate change, and you can do it. There are studied ways to look at change and anticipate what's going to happen. The future is not a straight line. The road is not set. The destination is not clear. There are ways that you can shape it and form it. But you don't get to do that if your antenna is not up, if you don't know how to look for the weak signals of change that might catch you off guard. So one of the things they teach us in school, when you get your degree in foresight, is it's called In the News. And what it is I'm going to read to you some headlines from the future that may or may not be true. If you think it's true after I read this headline, and we'll do a few of them together, you're going to stand up out of your chair and give me jazz hands like this, okay? And if you think it's false, you're going to stay seated, arms crossed, and just look extremely angry. You think you can do it? You think you can do it? Yes. All right, push your chairs back. Let's get ready. Here we go. I'm going to read the headline. Let me describe it, and then I'll tell you when to stand or not. All right? Here we go. So we've done some work with Chubb, and I like this one. This is good. Chubb's innovation group is actually looking at how to value and ensure personal virtual data. This is really important in terms of unstructured data. And by that I mean memories and feelings, emotions that we can put into the cloud. They want to be able to ensure these things, memories, in the near future. So looking at unstructured data, right? Eventually your memories, and we can start to do this now into the cloud. How much are they worth? Who gets them when you die? If you think that they are exploring this as something to ensure, stand up and give me the jazz hands out of your chair. Stand up. Wow. Keep standing because you look ridiculous and it's fantastic. No. Stand up, seriously. People seating, look at these people because these are my risk takers, right? You guys are my people, and you guys are wrong, so sit down. Guys, that's like Keynote 101. You never start with a true, okay? All right, but why did you stand up? Seems possible. It's possible, probable, preferable. That's how futurists think. It's possible, it's probable. Sometimes it may not be preferable, but it's happening anyway. You better know about it. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because this is actually very real in terms of the future. Very real. Because when you think about it, right, everyone has their fitness tracker. Right, this is locomotor activity. Everyone's got their 10,000 steps today, right? But also now we're starting to get sleep activity, neural activity. What does that mean when we can capture those things? There's a lot of risk inherent in that if somebody gets their hands on it. And this is also happening now with things like wearables. When we do a lot with pharmaceuticals. And when all of a sudden, also in oil and energy too, when we can use wearables to actually videotape things to speed up processes within labs, to make global teams develop chemical compounds sooner, to make people on oil rigs actually show their safety checks, not just say that they did them. What happens in terms of how liable people are if they did or didn't do something? And of course, you probably all heard about AIG and their drone insurance, right, in April, getting their commercial license for unmanned vehicles. Very interesting. They think in the future, by 2025, 160,000 unmanned drones flying around. And what happens if your drone gets in an accident or if somebody hits your drone? We could talk a lot about how you're going to become very attached to your drone in the future, but we don't have a lot of time for that right now. So what does this mean? I mean, obviously, this isn't your bailiwick in terms of products and services, but what I want you to think about within the industry is this, right? What other assets are people going to need protection for in the future? What will it mean for them? How will you place a value on them and the risk that it will have? These are new conversations that are going to start to happen in the industry. Okay. I want you to feel better about yourselves, so we're going to do another one, okay? Here we go. BMW has partnered with USC, University of Southern California, to create a car with over 300 sensors. This car is designed specifically to make its drivers healthier. If you think it's true, stand up and give me the jazz hands. Now, you're thinking she can't do 2 falses in a row is basically what you're thinking, isn't it? Right? Let's see. Let's see. It's absolutely true. Well done. Well done. Yes, it's true. This is Nigel. Nigel is a Mini. He has over 300 sensors. Why do you care about this car? In the future, car companies might not make cars. We can have a lot of discussion about this, of what the future of automotive. In fact, for future specifically, there's a few areas that we always look at. And for me, I just got back from Abu Dhabi last week, and this is for the World Economic Forum, and it's planning meetings. And the one that I always attend is the future of automobiles and the futures of cities. And they never plan those two at the same time, by the way, because they are so interconnected. So in the future, what will cars be? They won't just be about mobility and getting you to point A and point B. That's so yesterday. They could be about improving your health. So in this car, let me tell you how it works. 300 sensors. When you first get into the car, when you sit down, it will tell you how much weight you have lost or gained since the last time that you drove it, right? This is a terrible car. It's a terrible car. When you put your hands on the steering wheel, basic diagnostics about, for example, your heart rate, does it go up more in your parking space at work versus when you get home in your driveway? The venting system will be able to tell levels of pollution, and if you're going into a more polluted area, it can reroute you via GPS to a healthier route. And it goes on and it goes on. And what I love about this is, again, doing a lot of work with pharmaceutical companies. And we're sitting with the executives at one will not be named pharmaceutical company. And we always talk about, the big thing in pharmaceuticals is beyond the pill, getting beyond the drug pipeline. But for the majority of the company, it's still whatever's in your drug pipeline. That's where all the money is. And so how can we get people to better adhere to their medications? Where else can people be taking their medicine that's more convenient? Well, where do they spend most of their time? In transit. Okay, what if we could actually get medicines into cars? And inevitably, everyone starts to laugh, ha ha ha, that'll never, until it does, right? And next thing you know, 10 years from now, your BMW is brought to you by Pfizer. And these things happen. So what does this mean for you? This is something very silly, but this is actually a futures wheel, which looks terrible. It's really a futures PowerPoint slide right now. But there's degrees of, of how things happen. And basically, one begets another begets another. And in the future, maybe your car, well, you won't be driving it, so you don't care about drunk driving, right? It's not going to matter. You won't be driving the car. You don't care about grandpa driving the car because you won't be driving the car. You won't care about accidents because there'll be smart roads. There won't be mechanics because the cars will fix themselves. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. So what this tells you about is the future is not who you are. The future is who you're becoming. And that's a very important thing to think about. The future is not who you are. The future is about who you're becoming. If you are the most successful people in this room, you of course can tell me as a company who you are. You should, or you shouldn't be here. But the people that will be here again, and as John said, 20 years, or even 10 years, are the people that are very clear on who or what you're becoming. So I want you to think about this. What will your business, or you within this business, be doing in 10 years that you do not do today? And I want you to think of the most crazy thing that could get you fired. That's the crazy answer, and probably the most likely. Okay, here's your next one, and your last one. Finnish insurance company, If, has enlisted over 800 of its customers to provide live video testimonials. And they talk about their products and services to prospective customers in shifts, people that volunteer, and they get a discount on their premiums, from 9 a.m. to 8 o'clock. This was meant to have a new way of getting, don't let me tell you how great the company is, hear from the people that actually use our products and services. Stand up and give me jazz hands if you think it's true. It's so bizarre, it just might be true. Is that the idea? Let's take a look. It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. So the idea was, what's a new way that we can get people involved in the marketing and sales of our products? This is actually a screenshot of it, which I love. And to me, it's one of those things when I first saw this of like, oh my God, I don't even want them looking at me. I don't want these people in my house. Look at some of this, right? This is so funny. So this is a new way that they can get people involved in terms of testimonials and hear from the people that use it the most. So here's what I wanted you to think about. What are the unique ways that you could actually market and sell your products that you haven't thought about before? Okay, lots of change happening. What do you need to think about for the future? What will be on your customers' minds? Literally on their minds. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about quickly, about change. Now this is what's interesting. Guys, here's how change happens. It's very simple in a way. Change is about how aware you are of something and how often you hear it over time. And change evolves. But the key thing you need to know about change is how it starts and where it ends are never the same. Ever. Never, ever, never, ever. And I'm going to give an example why. But when a trend starts, it's just emerging. Guys, there's no name for it. It's the stuff you hear about. It's the weird guy in the conference room. It's the person on the conference call that has this weird idea. You wish you'd shut up. You got to get back to your normal day. That's an emerging thing. It's the boring but important stuff. And then it evolves. You start to hear it more. It's investment circles. No one's public yet, but people are certainly talking about it. Bloggers are picking it up. It's framed. GMO, social media. There's a term for it. And then it's mainstream. It's on the cover of a magazine. If you don't know what it is, you act like you do because you know you should be doing it at work or have a task force about it. And then the very top of something in terms of change is when it's resolved. It's totally resolved. It's plateaued. This is when there's government regulations. This is when there's lobbyists. This is when people are going to jail. That's when that is. Now, how does it happen to you? Here's how it's happening to you right now at this very minute. So back in 2004, you all got your Harvard Alumni Magazine, or you got your Harvard Crimson, and in there was this little story about this little effort that was happening with the students called Face Mash. Soon at the end of that year, there'll be 1 million people on it, Facebook. Right? There was no social media talk. That wasn't what this was called. Someone went into their boss at this point and said, hey, boss,